The Kidnapped Bride. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing story which resonates with love, courage, resilience, and sacrifice. It is about an abducted Christian bride who was stolen by Muslim invaders from South Sudan and sold as a slave in Western Sudan. It has been written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. Ahmed. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on similar happenings which occurred in southern and western Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Any resemblance to actual people, living or dead, events or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 53. In the wake of the explosion of applying the righteous vigilante justice. Meanwhile, the departing American husband of the Dinka wife, who was imprisoned in the House of Obedience, stands like a statue in a crowded ship as he looks at the people and things before and around him. Even though several hours had passed since the ship had left Kosti City, he was still unable to focus on one thing. His mind is filled with hundreds of dark thoughts and thousands of black memories. It is as if he has been thrown into a bottomless pit, and is desperately trying to find his way out of this complete darkness. Sometimes people in situations like this are trapped inside their own minds and cannot get out and see the world around them. It is as if these humans have ceased to exist mentally and have turned into vegetables. Medically, this condition is called clinical death. Even if the burden of all crimes against humanity since Cain killed his brother Abel were placed on him, Malwell might not feel as guilty or miserable as he does now. His chest liked a volcano erupting into molten lava, and guilt was eating away at his bleeding heart like a cancer that ravages the body of a person sick with a disease for which there is no cure. He felt he had committed the most heinous crime anyone could think of committing. He felt that his crime surpassed the crimes of the genocidal Nazi tyrant, Adolf Hitler, and more than the atrocities committed by the murderous Muslim Sultan, Ali Dinar of Darfur. He's like the hero killing the heroine at the end of a bloody struggle instead of saving her from the villain. Malwell remained in this miserable state until the ship reached the first port. In the port of Malakal, the second capital in the south, his soul was able to emerge from the dark world of Muslim Arab Janjaweed that had engulfed him for several days. His mind began to work again, and he became aware of himself. Since he left El Fasher, Malwell has eaten almost no food or drank any water. Only the instinct for survival forced him to eat little food and drink a few drops of water once a day. In the city of Malakal, his vision strengthened, and his mind began to remember those last dark and terrifying hours he spent in the western region of Sudan. He remembered how the injustice of the Sharia court forced him to transform from a law-abiding person into a law-breaking citizen. He knew and understood that the lawmakers of the country sided with the murderers and enslavers of his southern Christian people. Even their so-called divine Islamic Sharia laws give them the right to invade, attack, plunder, kill, rape, and enslave those they consider to be Christians, infidels, and immoral people. On that last fateful day in El Fasher, the American husband Malwell remembered a wise word that his rebel fellow soldier Olivia had shared with him one day in the woods. When the law fails to protect people, people must protect themselves through vigilante justice, she told him. Those are the words of the brave rebel fighter who killed the fearsome Hambadi Munwad Mahira bint Aboud. So on that black day in the Sharia court when the police kidnapped his wife, Ayan, Malwell picked up his pistol loaded with bullets and waited for nightfall. He also traveled out of town by taxi and found his big rifle, which was hidden somewhere in the wilderness, and brought it with him. He had spent the rest of the day recalling the painful experience that he and his Dinka wife, Ayan, had gone through, inside and outside the Sharia courtroom. They were treated as two impure Christian infidels who had no rights, and were separated from each other like two worthless animals. They were beaten, kicked, spat on, and insulted by the police, and were subjected to ridicule and insults by hypocritical religious judges. They had become a source of amusement and laughter for passers-by. He could still see Ayan's eyes filled with tears and her face filled with fear and anticipation for what would happen to her. After several days, her screams and pleas continued to echo in his ears. "Please, my husband Mawul, save me and do not let me again fall helpless prey to rape and slavery in the house of obedience to the evil Imam." But he stood helpless, unable to save his Dinka wife from the armed policemen and their voracious police dogs. When he was unable to prevent the police from dragging his Dinka wife into their vehicle, the American husband, Mawul, ran to the home of the Southern Christian lawyer and begged him to rescue his beloved wife, Ayan, from the hands of her rapist, her abuser, and her former master. Unfortunately, Mr. Akal said, as a recognized Sudanese lawyer, he cannot do anything against the law. The Southern lawyer said that the Sharia court is part of the judicial system in Sudan. Mr. Akal knows very well that there is no judicial authority or force in the government throughout Islamic countries that can overturn the decision of the Sharia court. Even the President of the Republic of Sudan cannot appeal or revoke the decision of the Sharia court judge. The laws of the religious court are considered divine rulings revealed by God to his final prophet, Muhammad. Therefore, the Christian lawyer said to the American husband that the Sudanese Muslim people believes the Islamic Sharia laws to have been sent down by God from heaven to his infallible prophet Muhammad. All Muslims in the world believe that the Prophet Muhammad is the master of creation and came to perfect good morals, and God sent him as a mercy to mankind. For this reason, Mr. Akal advised Mawul against attempting to appeal or protest the religious decision issued by the Sharia court judge. He also said that from a legal standpoint, Iqalaz is still considered the wife of Imam Abdul Razak, and not the wife of Mawul. Unless the first divorces her, the latter is not legally permitted to marry her. Whether the documents submitted by Maulana Abdul Razak to the criminal court proving his marriage to the Dinka girl Iqalaz Abdul Deng are true or forged, it is still not possible to change the decision of the Sharia court. Mawul does not have a marriage certificate proving that he married his kidnapped bride, Ayan Majak, from the Dinka village Tawila before Imam Abdul Razak married her. If Mawul confesses that he had sex with Ayan after the trial, he will be flogged before the Sharia court with 100 lashes for committing adultery with a woman who is not his wife, and his Dinka wife Ayan will be stoned to death because she committed adultery with a man while she is married to another Muslim husband. The Quran has stipulated this law and its punishment, and therefore there is no such legal way a human being in Sudan and the Islamic world can nullify it or oppose it. The demanding situation he found himself in forced Mawul to transform from a law-abiding man into a lawbreaker and murderer. He decided to take the law into his own hands, implement vigilante justice, and punish those Arab Muslims who killed members of his Dinka people in his village, Tawila, kidnapped, enslaved, and raped his bride, Ayan, and other Christian girls, stole livestock, and looted the property, gold, silver, and money of innocent villagers who were slaughtered like animals. On that day, he decided that no matter what might happen to him, he had to kill the evil slave trader, Haj Radwan al-Taishi, who killed his South African people and enslaved Christian Dinka girls, the pimping woman who turned his bride, Ayan, into a slave and a prostitute, the daughter of Al-Zubair Pasha, and the adulterous Imam, Maulana Abdul Razak al-Mahdi, who enslaved, raped, and took his kidnapped bride Ayan as the disobedient Muslim wife Iqalaz by the police through the verdict of the Sharia court to the house of obedience. If possible, he must rescue his imprisoned bride Ayan from the house of Islamic slavery, euphemistically called the house of obedience. He believes that assassinating the evil Imam will free her from his shackles and slavery. To successfully carry out his revenge, Mawul traveled out of the city by taxi and found his large rifle, which he had hidden in the wilderness on the day he arrived in the city of El Fasher, and found the lame old Dinka man who took him to the hotel called La Kunda of Africa. After that, the American husband returned to the city and rented a motorcycle for 24 hours. He did not inform the Southern lawyer Mr. Ackall of his plan for revenge. He lied to him and said that he had accepted his wise advice and decided to leave by train the next day and travel to Kosti City. From there he will board the ship and sail to the city of Juba, and then he must find his way back to his new homeland, the United States of America. He also said that he would try to find his Azanda wife, Olivia, in the city of Juba, and persuade her to immigrate with him to the New World. On that fateful day, Malwal found the phone book and discovered the addresses of his 3 archenemies. The first evil Arabman whom he decided to send to hell was Hajradwan al-Taishi. When he reached his residence on his motorcycle, it was midnight. He saw 2 armed guards guarding his large house. They are both asleep on their duty. He expected that they might wake up if he tried to approach them and enter through the only gate. Moreover, he understood that a dangerous leader of the Arab jinn Jawad such as Hajradwan would most likely be armed and might shoot and kill him if he succeeded in deceiving the armed guards and entering his residence. So he decided to do something to bring the evil wolf out of hiding. He used his large rifle and fired from his hiding place at one of the sleeping guards, hitting his left leg. The wounded guard began screaming from the severe pain in his foot, which was hit by the bullet. The other guard dropped his gun and rushed to save his colleague's life. Immediately, the great Satan, Hajradwan, left his room and appeared outside with a gun in his hand. Malwal used his gun and shot him in the right ear until the bullet exited his other ear and exploded in his evil brain, killing him instantly. Quickly, the American groom jumped on his motorcycle and fled the scene before anyone else or one of the family members of the killed devil called the police. When the trained rebel soldier Malwal arrived at the huge palace of Bint al-Zubair Pasha, he discovered that there were many armed gangsters and dangerous dogs guarding her mansion surrounded by a high fence. They are all awake, standing with their firearms and smoking their cigarettes, banjos, and hookahs. Some of them appear dead drunk and drugged like stones. He understood that his first trick, in which he killed the slave trader, might not work with these dangerous thugs and ferocious brutes guarding the palace of the pimp, Bent Satan Pasha. Therefore, he decided to make another plan to cause these armed guards and voracious dogs to make way and move from the gate so that he could enter security inside the palace of the Mother Al-Ghola, or Ogre. On the ground near Malwal saw a donkey sleeping. It is tied with a rope to a post on the fence of the large house opposite to the palace of Bint al-Pasha. Malwal crawled on his knees until he was near the donkey. He then sprayed some kerosene on the wooden fence and set it on fire. The donkey woke up and started jumping and making a lot of noise while trying to escape from the fire. Members of the Bint al-Zubair Pasha gang saw the fire, and all rushed with their dogs to try to put out the flame, save the donkey, and inform the house owners about the fire. When the house's wooden fencing caught fire and the guards and dogs rushed away from the gate, Malwal got the chance to enter the evil woman's palace. He found her sleeping and snoring with a sound like the howling of a wolf, while she was completely naked in one of her rooms. She looks awful, like an ogre without a cloth on her fat body. In addition, she sleeps in a large king-sized bed with the Dinka Muslim man, Abdullah Deng, who is one of her many thugs who have sex with her every night without marriage. Without his clothes, he is also completely naked and looks like a black hyena, or a black wolf. The enraged Sudanese-American rebel Malwal shot the evil woman in the chest and killed her before she woke up from her sleep and screamed. He also shot the Dinka trader in his bare penis first, then shot him in his bald, square head, killing him instantly. Immediately, the brave Dinka rebel ran out of the den of thieves and murderers, returned to his motorcycle, and fled before the armed gangsters, voracious dogs, fire truck engines, hospital ambulance, and a fleet of police cars arrived at the scene of the fire and assassination of the fucking evil pimp woman Bint al-Zubair Pasha and her fucker Abdullah Deng. Chapter 54. The failed attempt to rescue the Dinka bride from the House of Obedience. The third and final stop for the Dinka groom, the brave rebel soldier Mawul, to complete the implementation of vigilante justice against the enemies of his Christian people, was in the largest mosque in the city of El Fasher. He was determined to kill the evil Imam, Abdul Razak al-Mahdi. He knows it is the place of worship where many Southerners, Nuba, and for people were slaughtered like animals on a Black Friday when the preacher Maulana delivered his genocide sermon. His inflammatory words led to the satanic ritual of the brutal mass slaughter of many innocent Africans and the rape of hundreds of African women and underage girls. When he arrived at the Grand Mosque, the well-trained Christian rebel soldier hid in a dark, isolated corner of the street. It was 4:30 a.m. when the Imam of the mosque, Abdul Razak al-Mahdi, came to stand before his God Allah and lead Muslims in their first prayer of the day. Mawul decided not to allow him to perform his prayer that morning. He does not want his hands stained with the blood of innocents to pollute the sky with hypocritical prayer. Elsewhere in the world, a righteous Jewish man or a holy Christian woman must knock first on heaven's door on that fateful morning. The soul of the unjust Imam is doomed on that day to go to the bottomless abyss in hell, and then to its final abode in the lake of fire and brimstone, which God has prepared for Satan, the Antichrist, the false prophet, and their followers, devils and humans. The slave trader Haj Radwan, the pimp Lady Bint al-Zubair Pasha, and the adulterous Imam Maulana Abdul Razak also constitute another unholy trinity. The brave rebel soldier Mawul fired once, and did not miss his target. The bullet hit between the Imam's eyebrows, where the black prayer sign was formed. The shot erased that mark of the Antichrist 666 and covered the hole with blood. The evil Imam fell at the door of the mosque like a camel that was hit on the head with an axe before being slaughtered, foaming at his vile mouth. At the moment when the rapist and enslaver Imam of the kidnapped Dinka bride, Ayan, fell, the memory of her American groom, Mawul, flashed back through the events that followed his wife being transported in a police vehicle while she was chained and guarded by armed police officers. He recalled how the Imam scolded him and threatened to kill him if he dared to approach his legitimate Muslim Dinka wife, Ikhlas Abdullah Deng, again. Before the worshippers could leave the Grand Mosque to rescue their fallen spiritual leader, slaughtered like a camel on the threshold of the mosque, Mawul left his hiding place and disappeared into the dark night. He is like a black shadow that disappeared when the new morning light shone in the place. No one claimed to have seen the Imam's killer that day. The believers ran in all directions searching for the killer, but they were unable to see him even from a distance. The first time Mawul was seen again that morning was by police guards and sniffer dogs guarding the Imam's house. He came there to rescue his imprisoned Dinka wife, Ayan, from the house of slavery. He already knew that he would not have a chance to enter the heavily guarded house without being shot by the armed police officers or attacked by their ferocious police dogs. So he implemented his final plan to save his kidnapped bride by setting fire to the wooden wall of the house. He expected that the murdered Imam was keeping Ayan in one of the huts inside his spacious residence compound. He thought that the fire would terrify the Imam's family and force them to flee the burning house. Ayan will also have to flee abroad to save her life and the life of her daughter Sakina. At that moment he must show himself to her, take her and her child on his motorcycle and ride away with them. This is how Mawul planned and executed his simple plan. It is unfortunate that he does not know that the polygamous Imam keeps Ikhlas locked up in a hut in another house. He has 4 wives and 4 houses. Mawul disguised himself as a Baramila worker. He hid in a dark corner where he had stowed his motorcycle, waiting for the night workers to arrive in their tractor and trailer filled with human urine and feces. He dressed in dirty and torn clothes to resemble one of those wretched Nuba workers. He wore blue pants, a green shirt, and black rubber boots. On his head he wore a hat made of taffy, which no one else in Sudan wears except the Baramila men. The only difference between him and the Baramila workers in that disgusting job is his height and thin body, and their short stature and muscular bodies. The body of any Baramilo man is full of muscles up to his cheeks. None of the 30 Baramilo men are tall. If one of these night workers turned back and saw the tall young man, who had suddenly joined them, the American groom would be in big trouble. Baramilo workers have only one way to punish someone who is unruly or grotesque. They catch him and punish him immediately, by dropping an entire barrel of urine and feces on his head. The offender may escape this kind of harsh punishment, but must spend the rest of his miserable life in an isolation cell, in a mental hospital, or insane asylum. Malwell was lucky enough that morning to escape detection by Baramilo workers, police guards, and their voracious dogs. He ran behind the night train until he reached the women's toilet in the imam's house. Then he took a small bottle of kerosene out of his pocket and quickly sprayed it over a large section of the wooden wall. His hand reached back into his pocket and pulled out the matchbox. It was like a bomb that suddenly hit the women's toilet in the house and set it on fire. When other Baramilo workers and police guards noticed the fire, by then Malwell had reached a building away from the scene, where he hid his motorcycle. His simple plan worked well, except that his Dinka bride, kidnapped, and locked in the House of Obedience as he thought, was not among the residents of the burning house who fled into the street for safety. He stood and watched until all the huts and walls were burned to the ground. The streets were crowded with neighbors and the firefighters arrived too late. Then the groom, Malwell, fell to his knees and began to cry bitterly, believing that he had burned alive his bride, Ayan, who was imprisoned in the House of Obedience. He cried and became even more sad when he thought that baby Sakina, Ayan's daughter, had also died along with her mother. His conscience was disturbed when he concluded that his wife, imprisoned in the House of Obedience, could not escape the fire because she was still chained in one of the huts. This matter had never occurred to him before he devised his simple plan to rescue her from the yoke of her slavery. This is the reason for his terrible feeling of guilt that has been eating away at his chest since he left the city of El Fasher and fled to the city of Kosti until the ship stopped in the city of Malakal 5 days later. He believed he had killed his bride's abuser, killing her and her daughter along with him as well. So his plan to rescue his kidnapped Dinka bride failed miserably. He felt like the failed hero who killed the traitor and his heroine at the end of a horror movie. When Malwell arrives at the port city of Malakal, he does not know the whereabouts of his girlfriend, Olivia. The only information she told him about her life was that she was born and raised in Juba City. She went to school and got her nursing training there. Juba is the capital of South Sudan and is inhabited by people from every tribe and nation. Searching for someone in Juba is like searching for a needle in a huge stack of hay. However, the deep love he has for Olivia makes him do everything in his power to find her. From Malakal, Malwell continued his long journey to Juba. He had no idea how long it would take to travel from north to south until he finally reached the big city of Juba. The first place he went to look for her was the General Hospital. He thought the hospital administration might have a record of her family address since she was once a nurse there. When he arrived at the hospital and inquired about a nurse named Olivia Thomas, he was not only told where her family lived, but that she was in the operating room assisting in the surgery. The good news revived Malwell's dying spirit and put a smile on his face, which had been dried by the scorching sun of the Janjaweed Desert, the bloodthirsty Muslim Mujahideen invaders. His soul had already embraced Olivia's spirit before he saw her beautiful face again. He could feel her presence everywhere in that huge hospital. The surgery was long, and the wait seemed more than a century to her American lover. Nurse Olivia finally came out of surgery in her uniform. On her face was the sweet smile that Malwell was accustomed to seeing. She leaned close to him and told the patient's relatives the good news that the surgery was a complete success. Her beautiful presence and the nice smell of her sweet perfume paralyzed Malwell's tongue and prevented him from uttering a single word. She didn't notice his presence and didn't recognize him yet. Then the Azanda beloved girl stood up and began to move away from the seat, where her Dinka lover was sitting next to the relatives of the patient on whom the successful operation was performed. At that moment, her lover was able to emerge from his dark prison and scream her name. Olivia. His beloved girlfriend stopped and turned her entire body to face the person who called her name. Malwell was back on his feet by then. Olivia thought she was hallucinating when she saw her American boyfriend standing before her naked eyes. Her mouth uttered an unintelligible word. Malwell ran and hugged her. If it were possible for a lover to kill his beloved with an embrace, Malwell might have killed Olivia in those happy moments. Their bodies were glued together, and they fell as one body to the ground. They kept hugging each other for a long time and kissing on the lips, crying with joy, unaware of the other people around them looking at them. It was the most joyful and happiest moment in their lives that cannot be described in words. Chapter 55. After more than a year. While the intimate lovers are living as husband and wife in the USA, through some Sudanese refugees who recently arrived from Sudan, Malwell and Olivia obtained the new address of the Southern lawyer Mr. Akal Peter Akal, who lives with his family in Khartoum City. From their apartment in New York City, they wrote a long letter, in which they told their Southern Christian lawyer how they met again, in the city of Juba, the largest city in the south, and how they fled their country across the Sudanese-Kenyan border. They spent a few months in a refugee camp in Nairobi City, before they were able to obtain resettlement visas for persecuted refugees in the United States and settled in the cosmopolitan New York City. The reason for their delay was that Malwell changed his name to Matthew. The two intimate lovers do not want to inform the good Southern lawyer that the American husband changed his name because he killed 3 well-known Arab citizens in the city of El Fasher and then fled to South Sudan. They also do not want such confidential information to leak to the Khartoum police. They know that the Sudanese police authority always opens and reads letters that come from abroad to some judges, lawyers, politicians, or Southerners suspected of being agents and spies hired by Western countries, especially America and Israel. They expected that the Sudanese police would inform the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation of the 3 murders carried out by Malwell in the city of El Fasher, and then demand that the murderous Dinka man be extradited to Sudan to be tried and executed by hanging to death for what he had committed. Regardless of his noble motives behind the 3 assassinations, through which he carried out vigilante justice against the perpetrators, Malwell may not be able to convince the American police of his innocence. 2 weeks later, Matthew and Olivia received a reply to their letter from Mr. Akal, surprising them with the good news that Ayan and her daughter Sakina had not died in the fire. The Dinka bride Ayan Majok, known as the enslaved Muslim wife Ikalaz Abdullah Deng, had gone through a long trial in which she was accused of conspiring with the killer of Imam Abdul Razak al-Mahdi, Haj Radwan al-Taishi, and the daughter of Al-Zubair Pasha. The intelligent Southern lawyer, Mr. Akal, was able to acquit her of these serious charges. After that, she and her daughter traveled with him along with his wife Mary to Khartoum City, and lived in his house for a while. With the help of an international agency, Ayan Majok, and her daughter Sakina Abdul Razak al-Mahdi obtained refugee status in Sudan, and were resettled in Australia. Mr. Akal included in his letter the new address of the resettled refugee, Ayan. Immediately, the 2 lovers Matthew and Olivia wrote to the freed Dinka girl Ayan, who currently lives in a beautiful Australian city called Sydney, and expressed their joy, thanking God for her freedom, safety, and safe escape from the land of slavery in which she suffered as an unpaid maidservant and sex slave. Her Dinka husband, Malwell, apologized for his inability to save her and her daughter from the hands of the police, who dragged her like an animal and took her to the house of slavery of the criminal Imam. As well as that he narrated to her the bold steps he took with the aim of liberating her from the house of obedience. He did not know at that time that the Imam had many homes because he had other Muslim wives. He learned this when he received the letter from the Southern Christian lawyer Mr. Akal Peter Akal a few days ago. Then Olivia shared the good news in their message that they met again in South Sudan, got married, and immigrated to America, and that they had a baby girl, whom they named Ayan Ikalas. She was given 2 names because it is a custom among Christians that the church gives a newborn child 2 names when baptizing her. The correspondence between Ayan, Mawel, and Olivia continued back and forth until Ikalas finally surprised them by saying that she, too, had given birth to a child when she was staying with Mr. Akal's family in Khartoum City, and that she had named him after his American father. Mawel. The good news about Matthew's second child prompted the couple to discuss it until the early hours of the morning. The argument is primarily about whether Matthew should accept his second child, and his mother as his everlasting Christian wife, or whether he should consider this chapter of his life with the kidnapped and formerly enslaved Dinka bride Ayan closed forever. "He is your child and she is still your wife," said the Azanda wife, Olivia, laughing. Her Dinka husband said, "Yes, my dear, that child is my child, but she is no longer my wife." "Why not? What annulled your Christian marriage to her? Do you believe in the decision of that group of crazy Muslim judges in the El Fasher Sharia court?" Olivia did not back down from her decision. But Matthew is firm, saying, "I do not believe in their decision, but I also cannot marry 2 wives at the same time. I am a Christian man, not a polygamous Muslim husband." "Of course, you don't have 2 wives. The kidnapped Dinka bride, Ayan, has been your holy Christian wife from the beginning." "Listen, my love, Olivia," Matthew objected vehemently, "I don't want to repeat that bitter experience again. You don't know how much I suffered or how much I missed you when you suddenly left me at Mr. Akal's house. But you know, my dear Matthew, that Christian marriage is an eternal covenant. Only death can break this sacred marital union. It is clear that the Dinka husband is now upset with his Azanda wife. I believe in love, Olivia. So, marriage should be based on love. From the beginning, I did not love my Dinka bride, Ayan, whom I had an arranged marriage with her. The beautiful Azanda rebel fighter I met in the jungle of South Sudan is the only girl I ever fell in love with, and now I want to spend the rest of my life with her." The Azanda wife Olivia's face lit up with a shy smile. "I've known you've fallen in love with me ever since we met in the forest. I also knew that you didn't love Ayan, but I was the one who forced you to take her as your wife. I did it because I believe in sacrifice. If I had taken you from her while she was alone and helpless in life in Sudan, I would have been a selfish girl. But today she lives in a better country than the land of slavery, rape, and humiliation, Sudan. She now lives with freedom and dignity for the human being, and most likely she can now take care of herself and her 2 children, Sakina and Mawel." He follows the reason what his Azanda wife said, and her Dinka husband must agree. Besides, Olivia continues, the Dinka girl Ayan is still young and beautiful. She will definitely meet another guy who will love her and be with her always. That day, before they went to sleep, the 2 lovers, Matthew and Olivia, wrote a long letter to Ayan in which they apologized for not being honest with her from the beginning. They explained the reason for the sacrifice they made to help her in her desperate situation in Sudan. The correspondence between Olivia and Ayan continued for a long time, and the 2 girls became particularly close friends. It wasn't long until Ayan met a young Sudanese man in Australia and fell in love with him. Matthew and Olivia took the excellent opportunity to travel from New York City to Sydney City to visit Ayan and Sakina and meet Mawel Jr. While there, they had the honor of attending the wedding of a handsome Sudanese Dinka young man named Adam and his beloved Sudanese bride, Ayan, who was an ex-slave and former sex maid of the evil Imam, Abdul Razak al-Mahdi, and a sex-slave prostitute in the brothels and taverns huts of the late wicked pimp Bint al-Zubair Pasha when she was in her motherland, Sudan. She was kidnapped by Muslim Mujahideen invaders, sold as a slave, imprisoned, rebadged, had her genitals mutilated, beaten, raped, worked to death as an unpaid maid, became illegitimately pregnant by an old man of her grandfather's age, gave birth to an illegitimate child by him, and was repeatedly raped by the imam of the largest mosque in the city of El Fasher and the customers of Bint al-Zubair Pasha. Her brave American husband, Mawal Deng, was the one who killed her rapist and enslaver, who was the biggest Muslim cleric in western Sudan, and saved her and freed her forever from the house of slavery. About the author of this novel. Dr. A. Ahmed is a writer and researcher. He holds 5 university degrees, BA, MA, and PhD in philosophy and comparative studies of religion from India, and BA and MA degrees in religious studies and philosophy from Canada. He was born and raised a Muslim in eastern Sudan, but through his studies of philosophy and comparative studies of religions, he converted to Christianity. He has a writing style that is able to penetrate any religious, social, and cultural barriers and reveal the truth as it is. Moreover, his books rely on eyewitnesses because he witnessed with his own eyes the miserable conditions that Muslim women live in. He has written 25 books, but has so far published 10. His books were written in English and translated into Arabic. All of his books revolve around women's issues in Islamic societies and terrorism in Islam. His 25 novels are available for listening to them for free, read by his voice in English and Arabic on his page on YouTube.